This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
I'm Tom Hoppy, and I'm your host of the Most Painful Podcast. On our last episode, we spoke to Dr. Andrea Ferlin about if your family doctor doesn't understand your chronic pain, what do you do? She had some great insights and tips that could help you communicate better with your family doctor about your pain. So if you've missed this, you can listen to it on our Spotify and Apple feed. Recently in 2020, a scoping review concerning Canadian Armed Forces female veterans was conducted by Megan Nichole Poole and published in the Journal of Military Veteran and Family Health. According to this study, Canadian female veterans seem to face physical and mental challenges that differ from those of their male colleagues and women in the general population. However, these gender-related challenges are under-researched, confirming what has been reported for a long time. Then there's the Invisible No More, a gender-based analysis of women veterans issue. This report was created by the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs in response to a growing concern about the unique challenges faced by Canadian female veterans and was publicly presented in June of 2024. So what's this all about? Well, I'm going to talk to two Canadian female veterans, retired Captain Hélène LeScelleur. Hélène is the co-chair of the Advisory Council for Veterans at the Centre of Excellence on Chronic Pain for Canadian Veterans. She served 26 years in the Canadian Armed Forces and, among other things, was part of the first cohort of women in the infantry at the Maisonneuve Regiment in Montreal. Hélène, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you. And I'm also joined by retired Sergeant Anouk Beauvais. Anouk is also a member of the Advisory Council for the Chronic Pain Centre of Excellence, and she's enlisted in the forces in 2000 with the 3rd Regiment of Engineers based in Westmont. She also joined the Information Operations Unit, where she worked as a psychological operation analyst. She served more than 10 years in the CAF, deployed to Bosnia and Afghanistan, where she specifically acted as an operations analyst in the Hearts and Minds campaign. Anouk, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hélène, let's start with you. Maybe you can kind of give us a short overview of what this is about and why this is important.
Well, as you mentioned, Tom, some research has been made in the past, specifying that there's a need to look at women conditions, women veterans condition, health situation, health realities. But women's health was never necessarily like a focus point in research. And now with the report that has been published in June 2024, it is clear now that we need to look at this reality. And for me, it's there, it's out there. The title of the report, Invisible No More, I think is very specific about what it is to be a women veteran, and now it's all about that. How can we make sure that these women veterans are going to be looked at with their reality and the true realities?
Yeah, and I mean, that's we've heard that from the CPCOE, how they want to look at some of the differences, especially with chronic pain and the challenges that are faced by female veterans. Anouk, would you like to add something to that from your experience or, about the report?
Yeah, I'd like to mention that it's true that women have very specific needs. There's all the reproduction system. We are made differently. We have different skeleton, right? So we're not small men. And I think Joy, what's her last name?
McDermott.
Yeah, she does specific it in her research. We were invisible as well in the military because we needed to be like the men, right? Think about Olympians or athletes. They have, women have different gears. Why? Because we have a different body, right? So I'm happy that these recommendations are actually starting to be on the research side because, it is very true. And also, this is more on the chronic pain. And we have very different lives as veterans than our men or male counterparts.
Yeah, I think that would be good to talk about because, I mean, you talk about equipment. You look at something as simple as a rucksack, how much, it's one size fits all. But if you have somebody that is a certain height, that's going to impact, I know my godchild, when she went through basic, she was getting hit in the knees because she's very short, right? So that has a different impact on it. So, let's talk a little bit about some of the differences when we talk about chronic pain. So, Hélène, maybe you can start us off.
Yeah, like in some research, they said that women were more facing intestinal troubles, respiratory affections, chronic arthritis, chronic back pain, migraines, cancer also, more than the general population. But there's also some more specific things that I think Anouk can talk about.
Yeah, I can talk about my experience and many other veteran experience. But as a veteran, I became pregnant at one point, right? And I had already chronic pain. Some conditions were accepted by Veteran Affairs, for instance. But when you get pregnant, and I'm not even talking about the psychological changes, but like just in terms of your body changes. It actually modify the pain, right? It can exacerbate it. It like you can feel it in other places. And even though I had very great like case agents, some less understandable, like your body is going through so much change that your condition don't work anymore. It becomes like an ecosystem issue in terms of pain. And then there's the delivery and, the after. So I'm just talking about pregnancy here, but we could talk about the hormonal, the reproduction, life of a woman brings so much change in hormones, which also have impact on chronic pain.
And there's an expectation also about after coming back from your maternity leave is that you will be back in shape the way you were before you left for your leave. So, and like Anouk was saying, it's the body has changed, the physical condition has changed, pelvic floor issues are arising.
Sacral,
and it was not looked at. And now with this report, it's something that it's going to be taking into consideration into specific care for women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I'm hearing you talk about it, I mean, it does start in the forces. You were talking about equipment, talking about the differences too, and biological and physiological differences. So when you're leaving the forces, everybody kind of, my understanding, and from what I'm hearing saying, everybody's getting lumped into the same kind of group, right? You're going through the same documentation, transition process. If you're released medically, it's the same process. So will this report does this report look at that? Even let's just start with a medical release of females compared to males. Does it look at some of the differences that they may be facing when they're leaving the forces?
I'm not sure about today, right? I've been out for a long time. When I left, again, just like in the military, you're like, everybody's the same. There's no woman, there's no man. It's a bit of the same when I left as a veteran. Nobody verified my needs. Nobody, it was just like you're out. And when you get into the Veteran Affairs process, it's also one size fits all. It is condition for every veteran. And so I don't know if your experience is different, Hélène, in terms of like leaving the military, but on my terms, it was like that.
Yeah, no, there was no differences between genders. The thing is, they're now putting forward that there is a need to address specific issues related to gender. But the thing is, most of the recommendations are addressed not only to Veterans Affairs, but to the CAF also. So yes, I think the entire system of, transitioning out of the military needs to be looked at because it's a unique experience itself to be transitioning out of the military. So for sure, there's going to be a need to look at what needs to be done to help a woman transitioning out versus a male transitioning out. But it's not necessarily specific to this. It's more about the reality women are facing. And it goes up to the stigma also, because a lot of the issues, they're bringing forward right now, it was all about, it's all in your head. It's not existing. It's something because everybody was treated the same way because it was everyone was dealing with the same situation, the same format of, transitioning out. And today you can no longer use the term, it fits for all. It cannot fit for all, for sure.
If I can add, one thing is good with the recommendations, and maybe Hélène can explain, like the government answered that, but the recommendation starts with some recommendation to the CAF, right? So these are the future veterans, female. But the recommendation also touches the veterans from the past CAF, right? And so at least it will touch the entire cycle. And we're hoping that the research would actually gives the energy for other organizations like CPCOE, for instance, to find a researcher for the right services for women in the future and in the CAF.
Yeah, so I know we've talked, Hélène, offline a little bit, but there's the equipment issue you talked about. There's the hormonal issue or the body makeup, which is different. And then I guess there's also the home life with a veteran who suffers of chronic pain. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I've heard in last year's summit from VAC, a woman saying, it's not because I look okay that I am okay to take care of everything that I need to take care in my house. So the children, the meals, so the mental load it's a reality that a lot of women are dealing with. And Anouk, I think you can speak for that too.
Yeah, I can. And just to give a bit of load to this, in the demographic of the women veteran who have needs, they're often single moms and low education level, lower salary. So it adds up as well. We had a friend veteran, Hélène, who said, "Oh, I'm so lucky because my wife actually helps me take my pills. She reminds me when to take my pills during the day for chronic pain and mental health." And me and Hélène were kind of smiling a bit and be like, wow, this will never happen in our home, right? There's no one I'm telling my family when to do this and that. So even though we are injured, whatever, if it's chronic pain, mental health, we take care of everyone. And there's the kids, there's the husband, there's the house. This is the reality of being a female. And yeah, so I don't have anything more to say. I think it speaks for itself, but it's a reality.
But I guess it goes also with the culture that we've been raised into the military because, Tom, we're talking a lot about, pushing through and, mission first. Well, as a woman, when you have children, you have a family, well, it is the same thing. Mission first is we need to make sure that everyone's okay, and then it's going to be about us. So it's hard because when you're injured or when you're suffering chronic pain, for example, and you don't have the energy to take care of even yourself, but your mindset is still going there saying, nope, I need to, wake up. I need to do this. I need to push through, and I need to make sure that everyone's going to be okay. And it's detrimental to the person, but it's also the way that we've been built.
Yeah, and there's few time that a woman can say, I'm getting out, right? I'm leaving. I can't be in that room with the kids anymore, right? So you need the right support in the house to be able to do this. Otherwise, you just push.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like you're saying, some are single and they have children to look after, right? Which may be different for the male counterparts, may or may not, depending on their situation. And then even as a couple too, depending on how that dynamic works, who's kind of, is the workload being shared 50-50 or is one person doing more than the other? Then granted, then on top of that, they have their own chronic pain to suffer with and struggle with, and they have to look after everything. That's quite a bit of a load on that individual. So in this report, does it also highlight the need for Veterans Affairs to understand the differences when it comes to services for injured female veterans, where we just talked about the workload at home, right? So, I would suggest, if I understand the legislation correctly or the policy correctly, with Veterans Affairs, if you're requiring extra in-home care, if you already have a partner, it's a bit more hoops to jump through than if you were on your own. So is that something that they're talking about in the report too, to look at the differences, not just in how females are different than males physically, but also their role, at home as well too, depending on their situation. So I'll put that over to you guys.
Yes, I guess they're going to be taking more that into consideration. It's not perfect yet. A lot of its recommendation, they're looking at the table of disabilities now. They're looking back at the other chart for quality of life. So I guess it's going to be like a work in progress. And when you read the report, the solution was already, looked into few years ago, but now it's going to go deeper into what are the needs, specific needs, and what needs to be put in place to support these women veterans. But like you said, it's a portion is the CAF who will be responsible to provide some, better action, proposition, or whatever, and the rest is going to be the government. But also there is some recommendation that it's impossible to be dealt with within the CAF in the government. For example, there's a recommendation that the government said we're in disagreement for sure, and it's about the mefloquine. But this is because it's a Health Canada issue. So we have to be realistic on what can be done and how some organization can support these recommendations, how they can provide input to those recommendations also.
There was one recommendation that requested that women are not, because if they're single, I guess they receive less money than if you're married, so that they don't take this for, I'm not sure how to say in English, but is detrimental to the woman who's single, who doesn't have that extra layer of support, right? So I know there was a recommendation talking about single women. Hopefully it will be, that's more in the social, I guess, and the stigma area, but hopefully that will be checked too.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a change that came with the change from the Pension Act to the new Veterans Charter, where under the Pension Act, there was a funding for children. So on a monthly funding that if you had children, you would receive, regardless if you're female or male, you would receive the funding. And I believe that that was taken out of the new Veterans Charter. But I mean, Veterans Affairs is, and so that's, I think that, and that's a whole different discussion. But so that's something that, I'm sure they would look at with these recommendations, because you can have anybody who's single with a child, of course, needs that support. I agree with that. That's because, it's difficult to, I would suggest you're dealing with chronic pain and mental health. And then on top of that, you got to think how you're going to support your children. That is a challenge to it. Right. So what are some of the other recommendations, as we're getting close to the end of this podcast? What are some of the other recommendations that we didn't discuss, that you think would kind of stand out for the differences?
Well, I guess, when we talk about chronic pain and we're part of CPCOE, I guess what's important to look at is what research now needs to be pushed forward to respond to what is not available right now, because there's a lot of recommendation that can, be cross-referenced because it's very similar or it ties together. But I guess now it's more about what can CPCOE do as an organization to support this new report, and making sure that it's not going to be a report that's going to be tabled somewhere and nobody will act on it, because, in the end, it's out there, but the women are waiting for some specific actions to be taken. So, and I guess for me, we know that CPCOE already funded at least two research projects, the one from Joy McDermott, but also one from a CBI student who's researching on causal factors of chronic pelvic pain, which is very specific, but that needs to be done because right now it's not something that is recognized necessarily by VAC. So I guess it's more about what can be done as an organization. And for us, it's more about being proactive in researching health issues on chronic pain for women veterans.
And it's very exciting, right? Because it's actually opportunities for research, or like to research things that were not researched before, that needs real services, real life impact, right? So, and with this recommendation, we can put them into like research based like needs. And if you read them, like it's really exciting, like the how we can move forward actually in that subject. And I believe CPCOE can be like a great actor to that.
Yeah, and I for our audience who the CPCOE is the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence for veterans, and it's not the research that's on there is to help veterans, but I would suggest a lot of the research could be helpful to anybody who reads it. So you can go to the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence website, and you can have a look at that. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, so we can inform people on many health related issues. So I find this very interesting. And I'm sure as we go forward, like you said, the research will start to come out, and hopefully that'll help in many ways, both well serving and also well when becoming veterans. So Hélène and Anouk, thank you for being on the show.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, as always, I'm sure we could talk a lot more, and I'm sure next time we meet, we'll talk more about this. So, So for our audience on our next show, we're going to be talking with Andrew Thomas, a physiotherapist who does a lot of cold water therapy. Cold water therapy helps with chronic pain, chronic inflammation. So you want to catch that one, you can tune in for the next show. For feedback about our show or more information on chronic pain, you can visit our website, veteranschronicpain.ca. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Chronic Pain COE, and on Instagram at chronicpain_COE. And once again, Hélène and Anouk, thanks for being on the show. And to our audience, stay safe and keep the hope alive.
The Most Painful Podcast
is produced for the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence by Story Studio Network.